Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
It was almost 11 at night when my phone lit up with Travis's name, and already, that should have been my first warning. Late-night calls from family rarely mean anything good, and with Travis, they usually meant a storm was coming that he wanted me to hold an umbrella over. I hesitated before picking up, staring at the screen like maybe if I waited long enough, he'd hang up and text instead, or better yet, forget he even dialed me. "Hey, Lena," he said, his voice sliding through the speaker with that same boyish charm he used to get out of speeding tickets in high school. "Look, I wouldn't be calling this late unless it was important. Like, real important." He didn't waste time with pleasantries, just launched into it like he was mid-conversation, and I'd just tuned in. I sat up in bed, my fingers curling around the edge of the comforter. Something about his tone had that fake casual urgency, the kind where someone's about to ask you for a kidney, but make it sound like a cup of sugar. He told me his startup, some boutique marketing agency called Jetlight Creative, was days away from landing a huge client. Big brand. National campaign. "This is gonna be it, Lena," he said, voice buzzing like electricity. "But I need a little help to get through the next 48 hours. "How much is a little help?" I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. 15, he said, like it was nothing. 15,000. I sucked in a breath and just stared at the ceiling. Travis always had a way of asking for things like he was offering you an opportunity. Not a loan, a favor, a shared investment in his success. He made it sound like you were lucky to be invited. "I just need to cover payroll," he added, "and a supplier invoice. I swear, this new deal hits next week, and I'll wire it back to you the second I get the deposit." Seriously, it wasn't like I didn't have the money. I did. I've been working as a forensic accountant for over a decade, and I live beneath my means. I'm not rich, but I've got savings and a healthy retirement account, the kind of thing people like Travis scoff at as boring until they're 40 and broke. But still, $15,000 is not chump change. That's a year of rent for some people, a semester of college, a used car with decent mileage. I asked him to email me the terms, anything in writing. He sighed, the kind of dramatic exhale that made me feel like I'd just insulted him by treating him like a stranger. "Come on, Lena. It's me. I'm your cousin. You think I'd screw you over." And that was the trap right there. The guilt hook. Travis always knew how to pull it just tight enough. He played the family card like a damn pro, always quick to remind everyone that we were blood, but only when he needed something. When we were kids, he was the one who'd charm his way into getting out of chores, while I stayed back and vacuumed the living room. When he wrecked his first car at 19, I was the one who co-signed the loan for the replacement. That loan took me 3 years to clear after he ghosted the payments. My parents told me not to make a fuss about it. He's young, he'll grow out of it. But he never did. He just got slicker about it. Still, something in me, maybe stupidity, maybe loyalty, told me to give him one last shot. I asked him again when he'd pay me back. "Next Friday, at the absolute latest," he said. "It'll be like it never left your account." So, against every responsible cell in my body, I transferred the money. I logged into my business account, moved $15,000 into his, and made a mental note to follow up in a week. I even wrote a little memo on the transfer. "Temporary loan, Travis. 7 days." I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not my friends, not even my therapist. Because I knew exactly what they'd say, and I wasn't ready to hear it. I told myself it was fine. I even convinced myself it was sweet, helping family, being generous, all that noble crap. For a week, I felt okay about it. A little uneasy, but okay. 1 week turned into 2. Then a month. I texted once, just a casual "hey, just checking in, any updates?" No reply. At the 6-week mark, I called. Straight to voicemail. By the 3rd month, I was pissed. Not devastated, pissed. Because this wasn't a mistake anymore. This was intentional. I finally saw him again 6 months later at my uncle's retirement party. He was dressed to the nines, Italian leather loafers, designer blazer, a new watch that probably cost more than my car. He walked up to me with a drink in his hand and that same damn grin. "Lena, there's my favorite cousin," he said, pulling me in for a hug like I was some beloved war buddy. I stepped back and asked him point blank, "Hey, any idea when I can expect that loan back?" He blinked. Then, and I swear I'm not exaggerating, he laughed. Loud. Actually threw his head back and laughed like I'd just told him a joke. "Oh, come on," he said. "You're still hung up on that? I thought you were just being nice." I stared at him, my jaw on the floor. "Lena, seriously," he said, still chuckling, "you're doing great, right? You're family. You don't need it back." And just like that, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an oversight. Travis had never planned to pay me back. He thought being family meant he was entitled to my money. That I'd never push back. That I'd keep being the reliable one, the dumb one, the one who covered his mess and smiled about it. He was wrong. And he had no idea what I was capable of. I don't know what stunned me more, the casual way Travis brushed me off or the way I couldn't stop thinking about it afterward, like some weird echo bouncing around inside my chest. He laughed. He actually laughed when I brought up the money, and the worst part? He said it like I was the one who'd done something wrong, like I'd broken some unspoken code of family loyalty just by asking for what was mine. I left that party early, barely said goodbye to anyone, and drove home with my fingers clenched around the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went pale. Every traffic light felt like a chance to replay the moment over and over, the way his face shifted from surprise to amused to dismissive, all in the span of a sentence. The next morning, I called my mother. I don't know what I was hoping for exactly, maybe just someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, or at the very least that I wasn't being petty. But my mom, well, she's from that generation of women who believe family means unconditional forgiveness, even when it costs you something, even when it costs you a lot. When I explained what happened and told her Travis never paid me back, and now flat out said he wouldn't, she sighed like I was telling her the weather was too humid. "Lena," she said in that long, disappointed tone, "you've always had more than him. You know he didn't have the same chances you did." I blinked, not sure how that had anything to do with this. "I worked for my money," I said, already bristling. "I put myself through college while working nights at a gas station. Travis partied through community college and dropped out because he said it wasn't aligned with his creative path." She clicked her tongue like I was being difficult. "That boy grew up without a father, Lena. You know that shaped him." That's when the slow anger started to seep into my bones. That tone she used, not scolding, not supportive, just tired. As if this whole thing was just another inevitable little burden I should quietly carry, because Travis was broken and I was strong, and that's just how it worked in our family. Strong people absorbed the punches so the weak ones could keep stumbling forward. "And what about me?" I asked, trying not to let my voice crack. "What about what I need?" "You're not poor, Lena," she said gently. "Why are you being cruel?" Cruel. That word hit like a punch to the stomach. I wasn't sure if it was the word itself or the fact that she meant it. In her mind, it wasn't cruel that Travis had taken $15,000 and laughed in my face about it. It was cruel that I dared ask for it back. I hung up not long after that, gave some excuse about needing to get to work, but the truth was I just didn't want to hear one more sentence that made me question whether I was allowed to stand up for myself. I sat in my kitchen with my laptop open, staring at a blank spreadsheet, thinking about how messed up it all was. It wasn't like I needed it right away. I make around $7,500 a month, so $15,000 was just, what, like half a paycheck? The truth was, I didn't miss the money in the day-to-day. My rent was paid, my bills were on auto, and I wasn't living on ramen noodles. But it was the principle. You don't just take that kind of money from someone and then mock them for asking about it. That's not a misunderstanding. That's theft with a grin. And yet, even knowing that, I still felt guilty. I still replayed the tone in my mother's voice, the way she made it sound like my expectations were the problem, like fairness was a luxury reserved for strangers, but not for blood. So I kept quiet. For a while. I didn't confront Travis again. I didn't tell the rest of the family. I tried to pretend like it hadn't happened, like maybe if I kept my mouth shut long enough, the universe would balance the books for me. That fantasy shattered 2 weeks later at my cousin Nicole's backyard barbecue. It was one of those big, messy family get-togethers, beer in red cups, paper plates piled with ribs, someone always yelling for a kid to stop swinging a stick near the grill. I showed up because I didn't want to give them more reasons to talk behind my back. I smiled. I hugged. I made conversation. Then I heard his voice, Travis, loud and animated, holding court near the cooler like he was the mayor of Bullshit Mountain. "Yeah, man," he said, laughing, all-inclusive. 5 nights in Cancun. Private beach, poolside bar, the works. I froze. Someone asked how he could swing that with the business being tight lately. He shrugged like it was nothing. Got a little help. You know, family stuff. People got your back when it matters. I turned and stared at him from across the yard, half hidden behind a row of patio chairs. My heart was pounding in my chest, not with shock anymore, but with a slow, rising rage that started in my stomach and burned its way up my spine. He was bragging about using my money for a vacation, and everyone was smiling like it was funny. That was the moment I stopped doubting myself. That was the moment I knew I was going to make him pay. There's a certain kind of anger that doesn't scream or slam doors or throw punches. It simmers, slow and deliberate, like the way oil starts to crackle before it erupts into fire. That's what I felt the moment I watched Travis laugh about Cancun while sipping a beer he didn't pay for, under the patio lights of a house that wasn't his, surrounded by people too wrapped up in their ribs and core hole to hear the undertone in his words. My fists didn't clench, my voice didn't shake. Instead, something in me clicked into place, like a vault being unlocked. I remembered exactly who I was, and more importantly, who Travis had forgotten I was. I'm not just his cousin. I'm not just the boring, reliable one who always pays her taxes early and shows up with homemade dip to family events. I'm a damn forensic accountant. I make a living finding things people don't want me to see. I track financial footprints, trace shady expenses, and sniff out fraud like a bloodhound in heels. Travis forgot all that. Or maybe he never believed I had it in me. Either way, I knew where his skeletons were buried because I helped him build the closet. 3 years ago, back when his business was still in diapers, I helped him open his first business checking account. He was clueless about everything. LLC paperwork, EIN numbers, merchant services, and I walked him through every step. I even connected him with a CPA I trusted and helped him draft an expense structure template. I did all of that because I believed in giving people chances. I believed in family. Now, I believed in access. I didn't work for his company, but I had enough legacy permissions and backdoor entry points to take a good, hard look without raising alarms. I wasn't hacking anything. I wasn't breaking any laws. But I knew exactly which platforms he used, where his Stripe deposits landed, how he organized QuickBooks, and where the back-end weaknesses were that most people ignore. That night, after the barbecue, I logged into the dummy account we used for training years ago. It wasn't active, but it still showed a breadcrumb trail of his early integrations, PayPal Business, Chase for Business, and Square. I spent an hour just updating passwords, tracing recovery emails, piecing together digital fingerprints until I had what I needed. The next morning, with coffee in hand and a spreadsheet open, I went to work like it was any other case. No music, no distractions, just the low hum of my ceiling fan and the occasional sip of cold brew as I started pulling data. And let me tell you, Travis wasn't just doing fine, he was thriving. There were weekly transfers from client payments, some of them labeled with names I recognized, small brands, 2 boutique clothing stores, even a real estate agent I'd seen on a billboard. The numbers weren't huge, but they were steady, and more than enough to cover payroll and rent on a modest office. The real kicker was the biweekly salary transfer. Right, personal compensation. 1,800 every 2 weeks, plus random Venmo withdrawals labeled lunch meeting or content crew bonus. But the thing that made my stomach drop wasn't the steady cash flow or the clear misuse of business funds. It was a transaction I saw nestled between some random software charges. It was dated 3 months ago. It said, Consulting Lena repayment. $2,000. The notes field said, Partial repayment, family loan. My eyes locked on the entry. I stared at it for a full minute, then opened my bank account, went back 3 months, then 4, then 5. Nothing. No deposit. No record. No explanation. I checked every account I owned, business, personal, joint, even the dusty old credit union I keep open out of habit. Nothing. He'd marked a payment to me, but I never received it. Which meant only one of two things: either he sent it to the wrong account by mistake, or worse, he marked it for optics, as a fake expense, to make his records look legitimate. That's when my hands started to shake. Because if there's one thing that pisses me off more than being lied to, it's being lied to badly. I looked closer at the payment, the routing number metadata, the transfer tags, and everything I could scrape from the digital guts of that entry. It was routed to an account I didn't recognize, 1 digit off from mine. I ran the number through a few public tools, and surprise, it didn't match any verified bank profiles. It was likely a shell or, more probably, just a made-up entry logged in QuickBooks to offset income and make it look like he was handling debts. Some people might see that and shrug. Call it sloppiness. Not me. This wasn't sloppiness. This was fraud with a smile. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the mess of numbers and transfers and digital arrogance splashed across my screen. Travis thought he was clever. He thought tossing a fake repayment into his ledger would make it all go away. Maybe he figured if I pressed him again, he could just say, "Oh, didn't it show up? I'll check on that." Maybe he assumed I'd just drop it. But I didn't drop things. I followed them, and now I had proof. It wasn't just a moral failure, it was a business one. And that meant I had leverage. Because once you cross that line from family mistake into financial misconduct, you stop being someone's cousin and start being their liability. And Travis? He'd just become mine. And I don't lose track of my liabilities. There's a difference between getting even and getting smart. I never wanted revenge for the sake of revenge. Not really. I didn't want to destroy Travis or bankrupt him or make him sleep in his car. All I wanted, from the very beginning, was respect. Acknowledgement. The simple decency of being paid back what I was owed without being made to feel like a villain for asking. But when that didn't happen, when the Cancun lies and the fake repayment entry made it crystal clear that Travis had every intention of screwing me and smiling about it, that's when the switch flipped. I stopped being the cousin with boundaries and became the woman with leverage, and if there's one thing I've learned in my line of work, it's this: sometimes the only language people like Travis understand is consequences. The form wasn't anything dramatic, no flashing red buttons or government-level alert triggers. It was just an internal tool we used at my firm, something we typically reserved for suspected financial misconduct, especially in cases where clients flagged a vendor or business partner for shady activity. Since I was still connected to the back end of Travis's accounts, by his invitation, mind you, from back when he needed help setting everything up, I had access to a compliance flagging option. Most of the time, it's just a soft freeze, a kind of pause and investigate mechanism that keeps money from moving until someone from legal can confirm everything checks out. It took me about 8 minutes. I filled out the report carefully, using my professional email, stated my case clearly but without emotion, just the facts. Suspicious outgoing transactions. Inconsistent ledger entries. One potentially falsified repayment claim. The kind of language that doesn't accuse directly but raises enough red flags to require a deeper look. Once I hit submit, it was out of my hands. The system processed the report like any other, standard protocol. I didn't pull favors. I didn't hack anything. I just let the machine do what it was built to do. And Travis never saw it coming. It took less than 3 hours for the panic to set in. I was eating lunch at my desk, stabbing cold quinoa with a plastic fork, when my phone buzzed with his name. I didn't answer the first time, or the second. By the third call, I figured he deserved at least a front row seat to the theater he created. I picked up with a flat, neutral, "Hello." "Lena," he barked, voice already halfway to hysteria. "What the hell did you do?" I played dumb, not over the top, just enough to let him stew in it. "What are you talking about?" "My business account is frozen," he snapped, like I'd kicked in his front door and set his couch on fire. "I can't access anything, payments, payroll, nothing. I've got people calling me, my assistant freaking out, and I just got off the phone with Chase's fraud team. They said someone flagged it for suspicious activity." I waited a beat before answering, let the silence stretch long enough to make him sweat. "And what makes you think I had anything to do with that?" He sputtered. "Don't play games, Lena. You're the only person who would do this. You've got a vendetta. You're out of your damn mind." I smiled to myself, but kept my voice cool. "I'm not out of my mind, Travis. I'm just done being your safety net. You could have ruined everything." He shouted, and there was real fear in his voice now, not anger, not annoyance, fear. The kind that seeps in when a man realizes the ground he thought was solid has just turned to mud beneath him. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I simply laid out the truth. "You lied to me. You faked a repayment entry in your books. You used my money for a vacation. And then you laughed in my face. So no, I didn't ruin everything you did." There was a long pause on the other end. For a second, I thought he might hang up or start shouting again. But when he spoke, his voice was different, lower, quieter, a little cracked. "Look," he said, "I didn't mean to. I didn't think it would come to this. Can we just talk? Figure something out?" Now we were in new territory. Begging. That meant I had him. That meant he finally understood what it felt like to have the power taken out of your hands and put somewhere you couldn't reach. I didn't let up. "Here's the deal, Travis. You pay me back every cent, not over time, not in excuses. All of it, 15,000. And you write a message in the family group chat explaining exactly what you did and that I'm not the villain here. You own it." He started to push back. "Come on, that's humiliating. What would Aunt Carla think? This isn't fair." But I held the line. I told him I'd unfreeze the account the moment I saw the money and the message. Not before. He finally said yes. His voice was clipped, bitter, but it was still a yes. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll do it. Just don't destroy me." I ended the call without another word, because I knew if I stayed on the line any longer, I might say something I'd regret, or worse, something that would give him wiggle room. But then 2 days passed. Nothing. No transfer. No message. No apology. Just silence. On the third day, my dad called me. He didn't say hello. Didn't ask how work was going or what I was doing that weekend. He just said, in a voice I hadn't heard since I was 12 and broke a neighbor's window with a baseball, "You destroyed his life, Lena. I hope it was worth it." And just like that, I realized, even when you play by the rules, even when you keep your receipts and fight with grace, the people who never held Travis accountable would always blame the one who finally did. And now I had to decide what came next. It was exactly 6 days after my father's guilt-laced phone call that Travis showed up on my doorstep, and I swear, for a solid 5 seconds, I didn't even recognize him. It wasn't that he looked wildly different. His hair was still gelled in that trying too hard way, and he was still wearing one of those zip-up vests that made him look like he sold real estate in Florida. But there was something off in his face, in the way his eyes darted too fast and wouldn't settle, in the fact that he knocked instead of texting me from the car like he usually did. It was the posture of a man who knew he'd lost the game but hadn't quite figured out which rule he broke that got him disqualified. I opened the door slowly and said nothing. I wanted to see what he would do, what version of himself he'd bring to the table this time. Smooth talker, guilt tripper, humble victim. maybe all three at once. Instead, he did something I hadn't expected in 100 years of knowing him. He cried. Not loud, not theatrical, no chest-heaving sobs or dramatic sink-to-the-knees meltdown. Just the silent, defeated tear track kind of crying, the kind that leaks out before pride can shove it back in, and for a split second, I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to shut the door. Part of me wanted to pull him inside and hand him a drink. Most of me just stood there and watched, arms crossed, waiting for words. They pulled the funding, he said finally, his voice raw like it had been scraped over gravel. My new investor, they ran a compliance check, found the freeze, found the ledger inconsistencies. Said it was too risky. Backed out. I said nothing, just tilted my head like I was waiting for the part where this became my problem. I lost the office, he continued. Payroll bounced. I had to let everyone go. I'm not even sure how I'm gonna pay rent next month. He looked up at me then, like maybe some part of him still expected a hug or a hot cup of tea or a shoulder to fall into. Instead, I stepped aside and motioned for him to come in. We sat in the kitchen, the same room where I'd stared down his lies on my laptop just weeks earlier, but now the air between us felt thick, like it carried the weight of every unspoken word from the last 6 months. I waited for him to talk. Eventually, he did. I guess I always thought you'd just let it go, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. You've always had your shit together. Good job, nice house, no drama. I figured it didn't matter that much to you. You were the one everyone looked up to. That was the moment something clicked. He didn't steal from me because he was desperate. He did it because he thought I could afford to be taken from. Like my stability had made me fair game. Like being responsible somehow made me the designated punching bag for every messy family member who couldn't keep their lives in order. So, you felt entitled, I said slowly, watching the words land like bricks. He nodded, almost ashamed. Yeah, I did. I'm not proud of it, but yeah, I figured you'd be fine. And that's when I realized he wasn't apologizing because he understood the harm. He was apologizing because it cost him something. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a small flicker of sympathy. Not because he deserved it, but because sometimes even snakes look pitiful when they've been run over. I gave him a glass of water and let him talk, mostly just to hear himself say out loud the mess he'd made. When he finally asked what he could do to fix it, I didn't hesitate. You'll pay me back, I said, my voice flat. All $15,000. But you're going to do it in monthly installments. 36 of them. Each one tracked by a lawyer I'll hire. You'll sign an agreement, real, legal, binding, and every missed payment triggers a penalty. You pay late once, interest kicks in. You pay late twice, it goes to collections. You default, I sue. He blinked like I'd slapped him. Jesus, Lena. That's cold. No, I said, standing up and reaching for the drawer where I kept my old legal pads. That's business. You wanted to play entrepreneur. Welcome to accountability. He didn't argue. He didn't have the energy to argue. He just nodded and said, okay, like a man who knew he wasn't in a position to ask for better terms. We signed the papers 2 days later, with my friend Melanie, a paralegal, serving as witness. The first payment hit my account the following Friday. $416.67. It showed up at 3:07 p.m., marked installment 1 of 36. I stared at the screen for a while, not smiling exactly, but not angry either. I'd won, technically. I got the money. I forced accountability. I even got the satisfaction of knowing he'd think twice before ever trying to pull this crap on anyone else again. And yet, there was this dull throb in my chest that wouldn't go away. Not guilt, not regret. Just something sour and quiet and lingering, like winning a game you never wanted to play in the first place. My phone buzzed with a new message from my mother. Your father's still upset. Travis says you're being vindictive. Maybe it's time to let it go. I closed the message without replying. Later that night, As I sat on the couch with my laptop open and the payment confirmation still on the screen, I thought about what this all meant, what it had cost me, not in dollars, but in something harder to quantify. And I asked myself the question I still can't answer. You ever do the right thing and feel like a villain anyway? Comment below. I'm still not sure I did the right thing.